Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be back in Coimbatore, the land of the original Mysore Pak. I hope there is no one from Karnataka here because, as the saying goes, they can give Tamil Nadu Kaveri, but they won't give Mysore Pak. So. But absolutely marvelous, and thank you to the organizers, to curators, and such wonderfully curated by Shefali, my good friend, and Jaggi and El Professor. Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure, and to actually see this, as Shefali said, to see this grow right before our eyes is a real tribute to the organizers and to the city as well. You know, to be so receptive towards something, it's wonderful. And thank you for organizing my book launch. It's a real pleasure. I'm absolutely honored and indebted to all of you beyond this hall as well, who've received the book with such enthusiasm. To be very honest with you, I did not expect. It's almost, I think, till yesterday, 39,000 copies have been sold in 1.5 months, or rather 2 months since its launch. And it's just unbelievable. This is a country where 5,000 copies sold are considered bestseller. So I don't know what you have done. It really is a tribute to you more than anybody else. So forever indebted. The Marathi edition is coming out very soon. The Hindi edition is coming out, I think, in a week's time, or 2 weeks' time. So above and beyond that. Before the launch, I thought, because the title of what I am supposed to speak on is more or less the title of the book. And dare I say, use the cliche, please read my book. But if I were to say that and stop there, then the next 35 minutes would be in absolute silence, and we don't want that. And the organizers have said they have kept 5 minutes for question and answer. May I veto that and keep half amount, so let's say 20 minutes for question and answers, because I want it to be as interactive as possible. All of you have always asked such very probing questions, and I've learned from there, so I think I really love it if I speak for about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll keep the rest for question and answers. I think that would be lovely. I thought rather than elucidate exactly the points that are there in the book, which is Hindus in Hindu Rashtra. And those 8 points are the problems that exist, that have existed in India for the last 70-75 years. They existed and they persist. So existence was because of Congress. Persistence is because of BJP. Let's be very honest about it. And these are 8 reasons why I say we are 8th class citizens. And to be very honest with you, I did not know 4 or 5 of those even a year ago. So I was in the same boat as a lot of people, not knowing the intricacies or even the names or the phrases of, for example, the Wakf Act. What does Wakf actually mean, and what is the Places of Worship Act, what is the RTE, why is it anti-Hindu, so many other things. But that's the listing out of the problems. Now, I was talking to an absolute legend yesterday. It was a real honor to be sitting with Mr. Vishnu Jain, who's an advocate. He and his father have done more than most Indians to keep alive the flame of our civilization. I don't know whether he's there in the audience today. Maybe he not yet. Yes, he's a bit of a late riser, I think. But the astonishing conversation I had with him was eye-opening. And of course, he's like the book. He's recommended it. But he also said, what are the solutions? We know the problems, and a lot of people have made me climb the second rung of the ladder. The first rung being identify the problem. The second rung is walk a little bit, and the third rung is find out the solution. Now, overwhelmingly 99.99% of the time the solutions are given by the politicians. In our country, it is another matter that 99% of the time the problems are also given by the politicians, but solutions never come. But I thought I'll use the next 10-15 minutes and then throw it open to the audience to think of the solutions for each of these 8 reasons. I think that I would say sufficiently would possibly go beyond the book. It's all very well to discuss the book, to talk about these 8 things, but to for myself and to seek solutions for that, I think would do justice to the essence of this conference itself, which is Bharat, fast forward. So let's go fast forward, in fact, to the 8th reason, and then go backwards from there, because I think I want to discuss that first, because that was the one that is freshest in my mind with my discussion, after my discussion with Vishnu. So let me first talk about, just list out those 8 reasons why I feel Hindus are 8th class citizens, and they are given in the book. The first one is state control of Hindu temples. The second is injustice towards Kashmiri Hindus. The third is the Wakf Act. The fourth is the RTE Act. The fifth is the legislations that appease non-Hindus but target Hindus. The sixth is the judiciary that almost exclusively tries to reform only Hinduism. The seventh is celebrating those who killed and converted millions of Hindus. And the eighth is Places of Worship Act. So let's go backwards, and I'll try and give solutions. They may not appeal to many of you, which is exactly what I want, because I want solutions from you. So I absolutely welcome disagreement. And although I always overwhelmingly agree with my good friend Shefali, I have a slight disagreement when she talked about that Islamic jihadi bigot. I'll add jihadi to it, Mehdi Hassan, who was invited to Tata thing. I think such people should be invited, but they should not be eulogized. They should be taken to task. So instead of keeping his panel with Shashi Tharoor, who basically, two sides of the same coin, depending upon which way Shashi wakes up in the morning, team up this Mehdi Hassan with Jay Sai or Vikram, Fellow will never come back even when he's invited next time. I think that should be the thing. You need to expose these bigots, and Shefali is absolutely right. The kind of contempt he shows for non-Muslims it's public, so he's not ashamed of it. And as I say, he's a good Muslim, because he believes in every Quranic commandment. So he calls Jews pigs, cattle, apes, and non-Muslims kafirs, and their animals, I said, and pure contempt. Now, somebody like that is pitted against, Shashi or some Rajdeep or things like that. I mean, that's in the same well, and you keep on croaking, But if Sai is dropped into that well, then these people will never come back. So I think that should be the idea, to call such people and then to expose them. So just a slight disagreement. For example, I would love it if the next edition of Western Ghats Literature, you invite Akbaruddin or Asaduddin Owaisi. I think that would be absolutely wonderful. Forget about coming for the 4th edition, they might leave India. Which would not be a very good thing, to be honest with you, because we all love Owaisi, don't we? No, but so let's move backwards from the 8th reason why we are 8th class citizens. The first is Places of Worship Act, and I'll be only giving, I won't be surmising these now, because most of you who've read the book especially know about these problems. What are the solutions? Now, Places of Worship Act, the simple solution is, rather than dilly-dallying and waiting for the courts, this government, so-called Hindutvavadi government, with Hindu Hriday Samrats, plural, at the helm, should abrogate it. Plain and simple. And I'll tell you why they should do it. Because it is barbaric that this act exists, not only exists in our country, it has been ratified by the highest court of the land in the 2019 Ayodhya judgment, claiming that it purports to uphold the values of diversity and secularism in our country. These are Supreme Court's words. Nothing can be further away from the truth. It's a barbaric act, and to use this act is to deny the greatest principles of democracy, which is that every citizen has a right to seek justice. You may disagree with the verdict, but at least you should have the right to approach the court to get the verdict. So, how on earth in a democracy that fundamental concept has been denied is just so bizarre and shocking. It is beyond anger. So I look at many of these and I actually smile and laugh. I said, this can't be happening. But this is happening. And for Indians to accept it, not just Indians, for people whose role it is to kind of fight for Hindu rights. These are not Hindu rights, these are Indians' rights, these are citizens' rights. Tomorrow, if you are aggrieved and you want to seek justice, how would you feel if I suddenly say, I'm sorry, you can't approach court? This is exactly what Place of Worship Act does. And yesterday, and I'll just tell you the conversation I had with Vishnu, and he's of course fighting more than 100 cases, he and his father. And he's a minority, by the way, fighting for Hindu rights. I mean, Jain, but he's in the Hindu fold. He's an amazing personality. And he was talking about the Kashi case that he's fighting, where millions of dirty feet have been washed at what the faith of Hindus says was their holiest of places. That is to be expected because that has been ordained. Those are the reasons why thousands of temples were demolished. Those are the reasons why the demolished temples sometimes were deliberately kept half demolished and other places of worship constructed on top of them to celebrate the humiliation so that it is visible. You don't want to humiliate someone in secret. You want it to be known to the world that yes, I have subjugated you. And that is the reason why Gyan Vyapi Mosque exists over the temple. That's not been completely demolished. Place of Worship Act, the only exception being Ram Janam Bhoomi, it prohibits changing the scenario of any place of worship after 1947. So, for example, the grave, cruel historical injustices of Kashi, Mathura, and 1,000 others. According to Sri Sitaram Goel, who's written 2 authoritative volumes on this, Hindu temples and what happened to them, he gave evidence of 1,800 temples that were demolished and mosques built on them. According to J. Sai and Vikram Sampath, the number could be as high as 40,000. And I was the first one who, at least publicly, hours after Dr. Mohan Bhagwat said that there's no need to look for shivling in every mosque or whichever the case may be, we just want 3. I said, no, even if there are 40,000 mosques and we need to look for each and every shivling there. It is not a Hindu saying this, it is not a Darwinian atheist saying this, it's an Indian saying this. The question is, what can be done about it? I have identified the problem. And just to add to that, Vishnu is fighting for the Kashi case. What was interesting was he told me about the Mathura case, which is so cruel because the cruelty has also been added from the Hindu side as well. And when he talked about how the land, the Mathura Krishna Janam Bhoomi land, 13 odd acres of it, was controlled by a Hindu king after it was under the control of Marathas for some period of time. There was a Krishna Janam Sthan trust made, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, under the aegis of Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, and they got the control of that land. And all was fine until 1944, 1946 when Pandit Madhavan Malviya passed away. And after that, a Farzi trust was made by some politicians and their cohorts, and they kind of came to an agreement with the Muslims who had started to encroach on that land, that let's maintain the status quo. Wherever till the point where Muslims have come, encroached, that would be theirs and we should be allowed with ours. This happened in 1960, 1968. And this was Krishna Janambhoomi Seva Trust, some other trust, not the real trust. And the courts agreed. And now there is a masjid there. And Vishnu was telling yesterday, he and his father went to some Dur Daraz police thanas and Mathuras and all those archaeological ASI sites and everything, dug out the original documents of who actually possesses that land. So it was not a case to be even contested by the second Krishna Janambhoomi Seva that went into an agreement with the Muslims. It was not their case at all. What are we talking about? What kind of injustices have been meted to us? This is fraud. And the Supreme Court is saying, yes, it may be fraud, but you cannot approach us. Now, in which democracy, I ask you, can this be allowed? Maybe in Syria and Lebanon and Palestine, but it is being allowed in India. So, this act has to be abrogated, plain and simple. BJP is kowtowing and it is hiding behind the thin veil of its matter is in courts and courts are, no, that's rubbish. You abrogate it. You've done things, you've overturned a Supreme Court judgment. Modi has done only once, Congress did so many times, but the draconian provisions of the SC/ST Act, Supreme Court said these are draconian, we won't allow this. And the government, Modi government, overturned the Supreme Court judgment, and those draconian acts or clauses of the SC/ST Act were made valid. It's another matter that all the opposition that says that Modi government has taken over the institution of Supreme Court and is going against Supreme Court, they all sided with Narendra Modi in overturning the Supreme Court judgment because everyone is out there to placate their vote banks. Then they did not feel that Modi is overturning a Supreme Court judgment because they also wanted the judgment to be overturned. But here, why is Narendra Modi and the BJP or the government waiting for the Supreme Court to... Supreme Court has already adjudicated. It has ratified the Place of Worship Act in the 2019 Ayodhya judgment, glowingly. So Supreme Court is not going to abrogate it. So the solution is, this act has to go and has to go by the government. And if somebody has a problem, like people had a problem with abrogation or annulment of Article 370, they are free to approach the courts. Let them approach the court. So go the other way. Don't wait for the courts to tell you after years that this act should stand as it is. And then you dilly-dally for another few years and then, whatever happens. No, why are you waiting? So that's the first done and dusted. The seventh one, going backwards there, was celebrating those who killed and converted millions of Hindus. Now, this is tricky because you have BJP education ministers saying we are proud to have not removed even a single full stop and a comma from our textbooks. So, how do you act under such circumstances? It's very difficult to begin with because one may, let's be very honest, there is no doubt a limited renaissance that has happened in this country. A lot of people, logical, rational, right-minded individuals have found voices, or let's put it this way, the nation has discovered their voices. Whereas 20 years ago, Shri Sitaram Goyal and so many others, Majumdars and so many other wonderful people who had so many important things to say went unheard. In today's day and age, such people are not left unheard. So that's the good thing. But unless you change the textbooks, unless you reform what children are reading in the formative years, take it from me, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. It takes decades for me to unlearn. And not just decades, 1 or 2 decades, in my case 4 decades. I'll give you an example. All my life, I thought Ashoka saw the devastation of the Kalinga war and he was so devastated that he converted to Buddhism. 3 years ago, I was reading Sanjeev Sanya's book and I learned that Ashoka was already a Buddhist for 4 to 8 years before he conducted the Kalinga war. So all that devastation that he perpetrated, all those tens of thousands that he killed as a Buddhist, not as a Hindu. I learnt it after 40 years, not just a decade or 2. And by those 40 years, my thought processes have already been aligned to a particular ideology or to a particular sect, a particular religion, a particular way of doing things, a particular way of learning things. That's the tragedy of not changing your school textbooks. This is absolutely wonderful, but this should be the secondary stage. The primary stage is always where you tell the truth about this country, about its so-called heroes who are actually tyrants. There is a shrine for Aurangzeb. It's just unbelievable. That man perpetrated a genocide against Hindus that killed 4.6 million people. He demolished hundreds of temples. All those historical records are there. The historical record, his farmans to demolish Kashi Vishwanath, to demolish the temple in Mathura, to take the idols, to break those idols, to take the broken idols to Agra and to put them on the steps of the Begum Masjid there so that people going inside would trod on them. All these are historical records. And we have politicians going there and worshipping this man. Is there a grave for Hitler in Germany? Even the graves of Hitler's parents have been removed, the tombstones, so that even by mistake people don't go there and start, praying or worshipping their son. That is the extent to which Germany has gone. And here we are worshipping. There is Babar Road. There was Aurangzeb Road. There was Aurangzeb Lane till about 2 months ago. These are things that we have learnt because we've been forced to remain ignorant. This has to change. The solution is clear. You have to tell the truth about these people. You don't have to, make TV serials that eulogize Tipu Sultan. He swore off Tipu Sultan as kids. We worship Tipu Sultan. It's only 4 or 5 years ago that I started reading the manifesto of Tipu Sultan in his own language, in his own words. Then I realized that next to Aurangzeb, the biggest tyrant is possibly Tipu Sultan. If I say the same thing in Karnataka, there would possibly be FIR against me. But that's the fact. Karnataka police has arrested journalists who've criticized Tipu Sultan. This is the extent to our brainwashing. When the man himself in his words is saying, annihilation of the kafir is the holy duty of every Muslim. These are Tipu's words. When he destroyed, according to some reports, 800 temples, churches, converted thousands, lakhs, converted even dead Kurgis. He is the man who's eulogized. Forget Aurangzeb, look at Tipu. So many others that I don't have time to go into each and every of those calamitous barbarians who we still eulogize, who our Prime Minister still, and I cannot say unknowingly because he's the Prime Minister, he has to know the facts about St. Francis Xavier. Shefali has written authoritatively on what a barbarian he was. He was, even if the Goa Inquisition was not conducted under his aegis, he was the architect of it. He was the thrust behind it. And the kind of statements that he made against Hindus, the conversions that he desired, and we have our Prime Minister paying glowing tributes to him. You read about Chishti, our Prime Minister putting a chadar on him. You read about what he said about Hindus, the primary duty of the Muslims. So this is not something that we can blame primary school kids. You have to blame the Prime Minister. Why are we shirking away from it? So the solution to this is somebody has to go to the very top and say enough is enough. That person was Meenakshi Jain, but she had to resign, or she left that committee because she was so disgusted and appalled by what was happening. People aren't just prepared to listen. The truth about communism, why is it not known? For example, in JNU, why are people roaming around wearing Che Guevara t-shirts? Do they not know that he was a homophobic mass murderer? The fact is they don't know. That is why they eulogize. If they did know the reality of communism, if they did know the reality of Mao, of Pol Pot, of the CPIM, of the fact that Achyutanandan was demoted because he held blood donation camps during 1962 war for our Jawans. His party castigated him, demoted him. How dare you open blood? These are facts that need to be known. If you don't know them, you cannot act further. So that's the seventh issue. The sixth is judiciary that almost exclusively tries to reform Hinduism. Now, what can I say about this? I already have a contempt case against me, but Sai is fighting it, so it's up to him. It's not up to me. I can say whatever I want. Leave it on Sai. Jako rakhe Sai. It's a travesty. It's a joke that you have judiciary deciding upon the height of the handi, judiciary deciding upon each and every ritual of Hinduism, deciding whether what is right, what is wrong, but then cowering away, as I say, like a wet cat under a lamppost when it comes to rituals of other religious denominations. So they will say animal sacrifice is cruel. In Kullu Dashera, we ban it. In Tripura, we ban it. But they will not ban halal, the practice of halal, which many European countries have prohibited and said the animal has to be stunned before halal can be carried out. It is one of the most cruel rituals according to them. And if you look at the way it is performed only by a Muslim, has to chant Bismillah Rahman Rahim. The head of the animal has to be aligned to the Kaaba, and you have to perform. It's a ritual. But you will not ban it. You will try and ban, as it was Jallikattu for a long time, animal cruelty. You will try and ban Hindus taking their priest in a palaki as a procession. That's the tradition. Saying that this is forced labor. These are words. Forced labor. But you will not ban Muharram, where you self-flagellate sometimes to even take your own life. That apparently is not human cruelty. That you almost kill yourself and others by thrashing yourself with steel claws and whips. That's not cruelty. But we know this is the country where we live, where people are scared. But for the judiciary to be scared, even that I accept. What I do not accept is the hypocrisy of it. Admit you are scared. Like I admit I am scared. I mean, I am not Kamlesh Tiwari. I am scared somebody will come. All of us are. Because the state doesn't back us. We know what happened in the case of Nupur. The state, far from backing her, actually threw her under the bus. So it's the opposite that has happened. Until today, not a single fact checker. I have prodded and prompted them. Told me what was it wrong that Nupur said. If what she said, and she said is quoted in hadiths, then aren't hadiths hate speech? Why are you going after Nupur? But no fact checker came up with that. But around the same time, there was an IAS officer, a UPSC coach, tutor. He said something egregious in Ramayana. He said it is there in Ramayana. And there was a huge hue and cry, and there were FIRs against him. The very next day, those same media houses and fact checkers brought him live on camera with Mahabharata, with books. And he said, look, I have quoted verbatim. So, am I perpetrating hate, or are these books? And then the controversy died down. Why couldn't the similar thing have been done with Nupur? They didn't have the guts to do it. Judiciary didn't call for it. Judiciary should have said, rather than castigating Nupur and saying, you killed Kanhaiya Lal, you have put the country on fire, you've ignited the country, you have a loose tongue. Rather than saying all that, the judiciary should have said that what you say, is that quoted or is that not? But they didn't. So what is the solution there? I mean, in this case, I'm a bit tired because can I sack all those judges? I don't know if I can do that, but judicial reforms are the crux. But that's again a bit indirect, because you may reform the judiciary, but can you reform the judge? That's up to the judge. So there, I'm afraid the solution is not quite there. I have 5-10 minutes, I think, before I throw open this thing. 30 seconds plus added to that, yes. Then there are legislations that appease non-Hindus but target Hindus. Now this we know, I don't need to go into that. There are so many acts, the Hindu Code Bill, for example, that tried to and reformed Hinduism. Likewise, there is no Muslim Code Bill or Christian Code Bill. People, in fact, are scared to even discuss it. There, the solution, rather than my listing out the problems, the solution is bring in the Uniform Civil Code. Just bring it. The government asked public opinion for it, but I think the whole thing has died down. I don't think Mr. Modi will bring it before 2024. He's worried he might not get the 25 votes that he expects from 200 million people. So maybe he won't do it. But the repercussions of not doing it are not just morally reprehensible, they are repugnant. Because not having the UCC is allowing the same Supreme Court judge who was then a High Court judge, allowing a 50-year-old Muslim male to marry a 12-year-old Muslim female. Demolishing the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, which should be as sacrosanct as our constitution. What else is justice there for? What else is morality and ethics there for? Is it to declare that as soon as a woman or a girl attains puberty, which may happen at year 9, she is of marriageable age? It's cruel. It's cruel for her physical body. It's cruel for her mental well-being. It's just plain and simple, reprehensible, but it's going on. There is no public hue and cry about it. Very recently, the Parliament annulled the clause that allowed for divorce to be given if it turned out that your spouse had leprosy. Believe it or not, a completely curable disease, Mycobacterium leprae, that causes it. If it turned out that you were married to someone who had leprosy, that was enough grounds for divorce. Modi government annulled it. One party and one man opposed it tooth and nail, stood up in the parliament and said, no, this goes against our religion and our law. That man was Asaduddin Owaisi. No one knows about this. Are they concerned about human beings? No. They are concerned about what has been directed, what human beings should do. They are concerned about the book, not the people. But our scare allows them to listen to them, not to anybody else. Then I come to the RTE Act. Now, RTE on its own is not an issue. It's a worthy cause, right to education. The problem is the 93rd Amendment, and coupled with that, and I've explained the intricacies in the book, Article 26 and Article 28 and Article 30, which the amendment was passed with the support of the BJP. Essentially what it does is it allows the minority-run schools to not reserve 25% seats for the EWS or economically weaker sections. but it does not grant that same leeway to Hindu-run schools. And what is happening as a result of that is that tens of thousands of schools, Hindu-run schools, are being shut down. Now that is hitting Hinduism at its very core, because what happens is when a Hindu school shuts down, the parents of that child send it to the next school. Yeah, just finishing. So you are dismantling bit by bit the Hindu ecosystem itself. So the solution is that amendment has to include or exclude this clause that allowed minority institutions to escape reserving seats for EVS and asked only Hindus to do it. That's the solution for it. Then we have the Wakf Act. What is the solution for that? Is to absolutely abrogate it. Please read in detail. I have given the sections. I didn't want my opinion on this, so I have given just facts as that in that section, in that chapter. It is the most draconian of acts. It just has to be abrogated, plain and simple. Then you have injustice towards Kashmiri Hindus. I'm just finishing it very quickly. The solution is that each and every one of those displaced has to be rehabilitated back to Kashmir. That has to happen. That should have happened on day one when Mr. Modi took power, at least that resolve, that each one of those 7 lakh displaced Kashmiri Hindus will have to go back to their land. All those SGPC, they are treated, it's just an abomination. It's just cruelty, discrimination on a grand scale. That has to go. So these are the 8 solutions that I have given. How many minutes do we have for question answers? I'm so sorry. 2 to 3 questions, if anybody of you would like to. Yeah, sure.
Anand, welcome to Coimbatore. And you know that I know you as a scientist more than anything else.
Right.
So 2 questions to you.
Yes.
One is that you published a paper which I have read. So I want to know whether that's been read by more than your book, which is 39,000, number 1. Number 2 is making a QSAR of how you do. Let's say at 2:30 in the morning, there's a knock in your door in the early hours. So whom would you be expecting? A person who is going to vandalize because you have quoted extensively the Hadith? Or is it because it is the Supreme Court and the others who have ordered that you have trespassed their territory and you are on the border of being contempt? So I wanted to ask you a serious question with a fun note on it.
Right, thank you. No, I'm actually quite happy that the science that I do and the papers that I have published are not read by a lot of people. I know that's on a lighter note, but I think that's the way it is. I have written articles on science that have been read and commented by 5 people. And when I've inserted Modi in it, it has been read by 200 people. And when I've inserted Modi and Rahul Gandhi and Kejriwal in it, it has gone viral. So that's, in fact, if I can let you in a secret, we scientists are also very cunning people. We know which way the wind is blowing in terms of which way you would get grant for whatever you want to do. So the in thing being space science. So a lot of, even if you're doing biology, just add a few space science and this geo and all that stuff. You will have a greater chance, I suppose, of putting your hand on the kitty. So no, but I think that's the way it is. I like it, and that is the way the world over. That's the way it is. Science usually gets it's somehow, it didn't for the last 3 years, and I can say without being diabolical about it, I think it was important that the nation learned so much about a virus and virology and vaccines because of COVID. I hope it doesn't forget, like the nation forgot after SARS-1. Had we a vaccine after SARS-1, we could have used that vaccine in the initial 1 year when we didn't have a vaccine against SARS-2. That's the lesson that is to be drawn. So that's point number 1. The point number 2 was midnight, 2 in the morning. Possibly Yogi Adityanath. Darega to nahi. I'm just trying to think, is there anything illegal that I might have built? Maybe a water tank outside the home. There's a... No, but I don't think, other than a stray cat, I don't think anybody, people are welcome to come. That's not an issue at all. Yeah, thank you.
NCERT books are being revised, no, with some histories are rewritten. A lot of opposition happening. NCERT books.
Yes, there is a committee. There's a committee that is looking into that. After 9 years, yes. After, you can say, 9 years of more than millions of students having read the same rubbish that we read. Something is being, the change is supposed to be, has been promised on the anvil. Let's see what happens. Yeah, Shafali.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I've heard you a lot, and there is very rarely that I disagree with you. But on this one thing, you say that 9 years nothing has happened in general. Now my question to you is, what would have happened according to you? That Modi should have in his first term only acted on all 8 things, then lost the elections, then Congress come back to power, and then reversed everything and pulled the country 10 years back.
Right. So, that's a very interesting and important question. And that in many ways rationalizes inaction, which is what Narasimha Rao also said, that sometimes the best decision to take is not to take any decision. And politicians do rationalize their inactions with that. There's a lot of scare involved with that, and I think it's true to an extent, because while I believe that Modi and BJP is not pro-Hindu, certainly the actions don't really, point towards that. The Congress is anti-Hindu. So that choice people also have realized. People are prepared to wait. People are prepared to, and there's been tremendous amount that has happened on non-Hindu issues, development issues. So that's the reason why Modi is being elected. But on many of these issues, Shefali, I don't think you required 9 years. For example, abrogating Places of Worship Act. I mean, why would you worry about Modi not being re-elected because he's abrogated a draconian act? Why would you worry about Modi not being elected because he's stopped the dissolution of tens of thousands of Hindu schools because of RTE? So many of these, yes, you can say the problematic issues of this would be rehabilitating 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus, because that's a technical difficulty as well, and there are issues there that could take time. Legislation, judiciary reforms, yes, that's that's more of always elucidating the problem than giving the solution, because what is the solution there? As I said, you have judicial reforms, but there the opposition will come from the judiciary collegium. We have already seen what happened. So, that's a tussle that would take years to solve. But half of these shouldn't take any time at all and should not lose votes for Narendra Modi, because they are primarily catering to his constituency. That's the thing.
I do agree with you. The top item in your agenda, number 1, state control of
Hindu temples, yes.
And that relates only to Hindus. You're not
Yes.
taking away anything from anybody.
Correct.
And it should have happened. I completely agree with you. But I also think, and this is my point of view, I think that this government chose its priorities. So that is why it focused in the first 5 years totally on the last mile delivery, and that is why they got elected. So governance is always a matter of priorities. But I do agree with you broadly, especially with regard to the state control of temples, because I've seen, particularly in this state where we are in, 1,000-year-old temples, and they don't have money to light the lamp every day because the government doesn't give it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and you've hit the nail on the head, because I've said this publicly, that this book is at least 15-20 years ahead of its time. And the reason for that is that this hall might feel that these are the issues that should be prioritized. But there is India outside this hall, and that's 99% of India. They don't even know what these issues are. Half the people in this hall did not know. I did not know half of these issues. So they are saying, we don't have a toilet, we don't have a gas cylinder, we don't have a health insurance, we don't have tap water, and you're asking our view whether Hindu temple should come out of government control, whether RTE should. Say, who the hell are you? First give me all these amenities. That's the issue. So these are issues that affect us after we are certain of our square meal, after we are well fed, after our stomachs are full. These are not issues that affect India. And Modi knows this, and credit to him, and I say this not derisively at all. I am proud, in fact, that his government is a toilet gas cylinder sarkar. He has provided 120 million toilets, and scientific investigations have shown that every toilet that has been provided has led to saving of 52,000 rupees for that family. 52,000. And that was the time without Ayushman Bharat, and 26 crore Ayushman Bharat cards have been given. 170 million cylinders have been given. The biggest child mortality instance, do you know what caused it? Not pollution or household pollution. Gas cylinders giving Ujjwala has saved 19% lives. He has made a huge difference. I am not even going to highways and all those things. I am talking of basic amenities. So, in his mind, he was absolutely clear. In 2009, he said I want to make a nano class. People didn't even know what nano class is. They asked, what is nano class? He said, the lowest rung socio-economic, above that. People just think there is the lowest rung and then there is middle class. No, I want to make. He has constructed that nano class almost out of thin air. There are people now, more than 250 million people, who have these basic amenities. 416 million people in the last 15 years have been pulled out of extreme multidimensional poverty. That's fantastic. But does that mean that we don't even discuss these issues? Because the impact of these issues go beyond the immediate deliverance of gas cylinders, tap water and everything. Now you are stopping temples being given lakhs of crores of money that is due to them. Essentially, you are stopping construction of tens of thousands of Hindu temples making hospitals, Hindu schools, pathshalas, goshalas, orphanages that Muslim places of worship and Christian places of worship are doing and converting because they have those schools and hospitals. People bringing people into their fold that Hindus are simply not able to do. So these are not issues that can be pushed aside. I agree that these are not issues that can be brought to the table immediately. That is what Modi's thinking is. But everything should happen in parallel, that's the answer, limited answer.
I believe the large responsibility also lies with every Hindu. How many Hindu does go to temple today? So if you see the other religion, every Friday they religiously go, every Sunday they religiously go. So as a Prime Minister, I believe whatever he has done and unable to do in 9 years, he cannot be so vocal. He can go to temple and he's fully into Basma, but he will not tell that you guys go to temple. So that has to be something that has come from each and every individual, and I believe we as a group can educate our Hindus to create that kind of awareness.
Now, I think change is happening after a few years. All Hindus, every Friday, they will go to a mosque. That's not a question. Yeah, sure. No.
Get them to be aware of what is happening to this civilization. Of course, I am also talking of the big number of children who go abroad, who actually do not know that, and they think it is secularism is a big thing, and our kind of secularism is just apne pair pe kuladi marna kind of a thing, and they are not aware that these practices do have a meaning behind it. I myself was not aware till a decade ago how important it was. So you, in your position, I would humbly request you to reach out to this kind of educated and upcoming next generation people to be more aware of our civilization and how others also could go about it, and let them know. The minute we talk about Hindu, they say you are very right, you are talking religion, only religion.
Yes.
They do not understand that there is much behind it. And I think being such a public figure and such a loud figure, you should also add it for the next generation. I think that it is a vast majority and especially now with SB 403 and all coming in US, it seems to be acquiring a dangerous kind of a dimension. So that's my worry, and I would humbly request you to address it in any which way that you can and your friends can.
No, thank you very much, but I have to say this, despite your kindness showered on me, the real heroes and legends are people like Jesai and Vishnu and his father. They are the people who are actually making the difference on the ground. My position, when you say, is as exalted as any other professor at JNU, to be honest, you know. Other than that, and I have a lot of other things to do, so if I'm to paraphrase Newton, if I'm able to look further and talk about these issues, it is because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants like Vishnu, who yesterday, in fact, opened my eyes and said, this government is spending more than 3,200 crores, giving money to wakf land and buildings on them, to give them interest-free loans. How on earth is this secularism? Am I being an Islamophobe if I say this? Do people even understand the definition of secularism? So, ma'am, you're right, but at the end of the day, these things have to stem from the top. You know, even Jesai and Vishnu and Vikram, they can only do so much. It has to come from the Prime Minister or the President, you know. Then things change. Otherwise, you know, we can talk about it.
Sir, since you are an atheist, I am sure that they will think that you are totally impartial, which you are, and they must listen to you more. That was my
Okay, right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I request Sri Krishnan of Sri Krishna Sweets and Sri Shyam Sundarji to come up to the stage to release the book.
This is a real honor for me. It's almost like the, yes, the God from the Sanctum Sanctorum has come to, you know, it's really. I am no longer an atheist. I have seen God.
I request our Professor Kanag Sabapati sir to give a memento to Anand sir.